So you hear it all the time, right? By every official measure, the economy seems to be doing just fine. GDP is growing, job growth looks strong. But then you look at your own life, your grocery bills, your savings, and it just doesn't add up. If everything's so great, why does it feel like things are kind of falling apart? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into why the recession might not be coming, it might already be here, and the data is just playing catch up.
This is the big question, isn't it? It's the puzzle at the heart of everything right now. Why does the economy feel so awful when the official numbers look so good? That huge disconnect between the data we're shown and the lives we're actually living? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack. I mean, it's really like a tale of two completely different economies living side by side. On one side, you've got the official story. Hey, look, growing GDP, strong job numbers, super low unemployment. But then there's the other side, the one millions of us are actually experiencing. Everything costs way more, there's this constant feeling of financial insecurity, and whatever savings we had are just disappearing.
All right, so let's get into our first section, the official story versus reality. And here's the most important thing you need to remember. Recessions are always declared looking backward in the rearview mirror.
Just look at the Great Recession. It actually kicked off in December 2007, but the official declaration from the National Bureau of Economic Research, that didn't come until December 2008, a full year later. The same thing happened with the dot-com bust. It started in March 2001, but they didn't call it until November. See, the NBR needs a ton of data to make the call, which means you could be deep into a recession right now and not even know it, at least not officially. Okay, let's keep going and see how this all connects. Section 2. Deconstructing the job market. We're going to take a much closer look at those big headline numbers that we always hear about on the news. First up, the big one, the 4.4% official unemployment rate. Now, on the surface, you see that number and you think, hey, that sounds pretty healthy, right? Not bad.
But here's the catch. That shiny number only counts people who are actively looking for a job. Since the pandemic, more than 1.6 million Americans have just stopped looking. They're not counted as unemployed. They've simply vanished from the statistics altogether. Poof, gone. And when you dig just a little deeper, the story gets even more worrying. The number of people even in the labor force has dropped. A staggering 4.4 million Americans are stuck working part-time only because they can't find a full-time gig. What we're seeing is this quiet, slow-motion replacement of stable full-time jobs with multiple, less secure part-time ones. There's a perfect analogy for this. It's like saying the housing market is totally fine because people have roofs over their heads, but you're ignoring the fact that a whole bunch of them have been forced to move from a house into a tiny studio apartment. That's kind of how the job numbers work. If one full-time worker gets laid off and has to scramble to get 2 part-time jobs just to survive, guess what? The government actually counts that as a net gain of 1 job. It's crazy, and it hides a much, much tougher reality. So that shaky job market, it leads us right to our next section, the squeeze on wallets. This is where we look at how all this stuff, inflation, debt, is hitting American households right where it hurts. Let's start with this number and just let it sink in for a second. Since 2020, cumulative inflation is over 25%. That means your money is worth a whole lot less. Everything, from gas to groceries, costs a quarter more than it did just a few short years ago. So how are people supposed to cope with that? Well, one analyst put it perfectly. They said Americans aren't just swiping their credit cards for convenience anymore. They're borrowing just to cover the basics. They're holding their lifestyle together with a plastic poison. And that plastic poison, it has a price tag, a very big one. We're now at $1.28 trillion in credit card debt. That is a record high. And the average interest rate on that debt, a brutal 22%. So the next time you hear about strong consumer spending, what you should really hear is strong consumer borrowing.
Historically, Americans used to save about 8% of what they earned. That was the norm. But look at where we are now. The savings rate has cratered to just 4.5%. People are burning through their savings and racking up debt just to stay afloat. This, my friends, is textbook pre-recession behavior. So what are the things that are supposed to warn us before a recession hits? Let's get into Section 4, flashing red lights. These are the forward-looking indicators designed to predict a downturn before it's officially here. I want you to think of this as the economy's check engine light. There's a tool called the Leading Economic Index, and it is designed for this exact purpose, to tell us what's coming. Well, that light has been blinking red for 6 straight months.
This isn't just a random blip. It's the exact same pattern we saw right before the crashes in 2001 and 2008.
And it's not just one warning light either. It's like the entire dashboard is lit up. We've got falling labor participation, vanishing savings, rising bankruptcies, surging credit card debt, and declining job quality, all happening at the exact same time. Now, any one of these could be a false alarm, sure, but all of them together, that's pointing to something much, much bigger going on under the hood. Which brings us to the million-dollar question. The big one. Section 5, why do the numbers lie? We're about to uncover the hidden, fundamental flaw in how we even measure the entire economy. The key to this whole puzzle might just be an idea called Goodhart's law. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually super simple and really powerful. It says when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Okay, so let's see how this plays out in the real world. The target becomes a low unemployment rate. What gets missed? The reality of poor job quality. Because believe it or not, working just 1 hour a week means you're officially employed. The target is GDP growth. What gets missed? We're not separating spending that comes from actual income versus spending that's just fueled by debt. The target is a managed inflation rate. What gets missed? The actual rise in your cost of living. You see? We're managing the metrics, not the real economy.
So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this simple truth. The economy people actually live in day to day, and the economy that's being reported to them, well, they aren't always the same thing. And it's in that gap, that space between measurement and reality, that recessions can hide until they're just too big to ignore.
So what can you do? How can you see through the headlines? Here's a new toolkit for you. The next time you hear about amazing job growth, ask about job quality. When you hear that wages are growing, check that number against real inflation. And when they celebrate strong consumer spending, go look at the credit data. There is always more to the story.
And that leaves us with one last critical question. The pattern we're seeing is crystal clear. A deteriorating job market, credit cards being maxed out, and savings disappearing. This is the classic cocktail that has come before major recessions time and time again. So when the official numbers finally decide to catch up with reality, who's going to be prepared?